up until this point, we've been creating variables that have one value. For example, const a equals 1 or 2, or the string hi. It always just has one value. But what if we wanted to create a variable that has multiple values? It has a list of values. This is where you would use something called an array. So in our example, what we want to do is we want to set a here equal to the list of numbers between 1 and 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So how would we do that? Well, in JavaScript, to define an array, all we need to do is take the opening and closing square brackets, as you can see here. They're right next to the curly brackets. They're the same exact key, you just don't hold down shift when you press on them. This is going to give us this square brackets here. And inside of here, we put a comma delimited list of all of our items. So we put the first element in our list, which in our case is 1, and a comma. Then the second element, 2, and a comma. Then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we have a list separated by commas. And the nice thing about this, we can put as much spacing in between these items as we want. It really doesn't matter, spaces between the commas. All that matters is you have an element, in our case this number, a comma, and then another element. That's all that matters. If we save this, it'll automatically reformat everything for us via prettier standards, which as you can see has one space after the comma and no spaces before the comma. This is just standard practice. It looks more like English and it's easier to read. So now we have an array called a. Let's log this out and see what we get. So console log a, click save. You can see over here we have an array, which it says has 10 items. That's what this first section in parentheses here means. And then we have our list of 10 items. We click this drop down. It'll show you all 10 of our items as well as the length of our array. Something kind of interesting though you'll see though is we have what's called an index here on the left hand side. It's saying the element at the 0 index is 1. The element at the first index is 2, and so on all the way up to the 9th index, which is element 10. With arrays, normally when you count things, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But with arrays, you start counting at 0. So the first element in our array, which is 1, is at the 0th index. It is at position 0. While in our case, the last element, number 10, is at position 9. Even though it's the 10th element in our list, we started counting at 0, so we have element 9 here. This is something a ton of people get confused with when dealing with arrays, is that they start at 0 instead of at 1, which is what you're used to if you're just normally counting out numbers. So now that we have this list of numbers, how exactly do we access our elements? What if we want to get the first element in our array? How would we do that? Because right now we can only access all of the elements at once. Well, with an array, if you want to access a specific element at one position in your array, all you do is use the same brackets. So we have an opening and closing square bracket, and then we type the number of the index. And remember, with arrays, we start at index 0. So if you want the first element, you say you want the element at index 0. Now if we save, you can see it prints out 1, which is the first element in our array. If we want the second element, that is the one at index 1, because again, we start at 0. So the second element goes 0, 1, which is the first index here, and we save, we get the element 2. And all the way down in our last element here, it is just the length of our array minus 1. Our array is 10 long, as you can see. So this is our 9th element, or our 9th index, I'm sorry, which is our 10th element. And you can see we get 10 being printed out. So just remember, when you're dealing with arrays, you need to subtract 1 from the position. So if you want position 1, that is index 0. And as you can see, we get position 1 by using 0. Now, before we get too much further into arrays, I do want to say one thing. If you have a list of arrays, you can add an extra comma at the end, and it's not going to make any difference. And you'll notice this if we have these on multiple different lines. For example, let me just put all these on a different line. This is common to do if you have a really long list. Now what you can see, whoops, if I save it just goes all in one line. But if I put a comma here, and we'll just put a bunch of 10s at the end of our list so it stays on multiple lines, and we save, you can see prettier is removing this comma, but we can leave that in there by default. If I just go File, Preferences, Settings, and I type in prettier, comma, and it says trailing comma. Essentially what this says is, do you want a trailing comma at the end of your list of arrays? If we say all, and we just come over to our script and save, you can see it's forcing a trailing comma to be at the end of our list. This is just a preference whether or not you want this there or not. I generally don't put it, which is why I just leave this at the default of none, but you can put it there if you want. It really doesn't make any difference. You just notice that prettier is going to automatically remove or add that, and JavaScript is going to work the same whether you have a comma at the end or whether you don't. It does not matter. Now let's go back to what we had before, which is everything on one line. Prettier does all that for us, which is really nice. And now what I want to do is add a new element to our array. So we can say console.log a. This is our list, and if we run, you see we have 10 elements, 1 through 10. What if I want to add a new element to the array? All you do is say a.push, and we're just calling this function push on our array, and we push in anything we want. And for our case, we'll do 11. We click save. We now have a list of 11 elements, and you can see we added 11 to the end of our list. Push just adds an element to the end of your list. And the important thing to note is you need to make sure you have your array here, followed by a period, followed by this push keyword. And since it's a function, we just use the parentheses and pass in the value 11, which is what we want to add to the end of our array. Something nice about arrays in JavaScript is you can even mix and match numbers, strings, booleans. It does not matter. We could say a.push, and we want to push the string high. Now when we save, you can see we have the numbers 1 through 11, and then at the very bottom we have this string high. So we have access to all these different parts of our array. We can add in strings, numbers, booleans, it doesn't matter. You can mix and match as much as you want, which is kind of a cool feature of JavaScript. It's not something you'll probably do very often because generally if you have a list of numbers, you're not going to add a string in there, but hey, you can do it, which is nice. You could even go so far as to put an array inside of another array. So let's create a new array with the values of, for example, high and by. So now we have an array high by, and we're adding that array into our current array. So now if we look at this, you can see here we have our array of elements. There's 12 of them, and our 11th element is an array that has 2 elements, high and by, and we can expand this and see now we have an array inside of another array. So if we were to just go backwards here a little bit, let's get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, and now what we want to do up here is just have an array of 2 arrays. We'll have high by, and we'll have 1, 2. And let's save. And the nice thing is Prettier moves this onto different lines for us. So you can see these outside brackets say we have an array. And then inside that, we're just defining a brand new array. This is no different than just defining a variable, you know, array1 is equal to this, and then putting here array1. It's no different than doing that. We're just defining it all in one spot, which is a little bit easier to work with. So now we have an array of arrays. As you can see, this array has 2 arrays inside of it, and they're nested inside of each other. This is called nested arrays. And if you want to access elements in a nested array, all you need to do is just say here, we want to get this first array. We're going to say 0 index. It's going to return high by. We click save. It returns to us this array high by. And now what we can do, since this is just another array, we can just use the brackets again to say we want to get the first element in the nested array. So what we're doing is we're getting the first element of A, which is high by. Then we're getting the first element of high by, which is high. So this is going to print out high, just like we expect. You can mix and match as much as you want with nested arrays, and it really doesn't matter. Generally, it's not something you're going to run into super often, but it's important to know that you can put arrays inside of other arrays. You can put anything you want inside of an array, it does not matter. So now I want you to do your own exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to create an array with the first 5 letters of the alphabet, and then print out the middle element in the array, which in our case is going to be C. So I want you to do this real quick, pause the video, try this out, and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, hopefully you've had some time to do that. So we'll create an array, we'll just call it A. Remember, you need to use those square brackets to start and to close your array. And then in here, we're going to put the letters of the alphabet, in our case A, B, C, D, and E. These are the first 5 letters of the alphabet. So we've done everything in this first section. Now we just need to print out the middle element in the array. So we can say console.log A, and we know to get the first element is going to be 0. That gives us A. The second element is index 1, which is B. So the third element, C, which is the middle, is going to be the index of 2. So A of 2, we save that, we get C being printed out. So this is how you could create this form of array. So now I want you to also do another exercise. I'm going to have const A is equal to an array, and this array is going to have arrays inside of it. Here we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we're going to have another array, which is just going to go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just like that. And let's just, for good measure, do another one. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There we go. So we have an array with 3 separate arrays, 1 through 5, 6 through 10, and 11 through 15. And what I want you to do is print out 4, 8, and 11. I want you to do 3 different logs where you print out 4, then 8, and then 11. So pause the video here. This one's a little bit tricky, but just give it a chance. And if you get stuck, just come back and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So hopefully you've taken a chance to try this out. What we're going to do here is we're going to say console.log a, and we want to get here for our first element 4, which is in our first array inside of our arrays. So we know this is index 0. So we come in here with a 0. Then we know 4 is here, the fourth element in our array. So 0, 1, 2, 3, that's index 3. So we say 0, 3. Save this and it prints out 4. Let's just copy this down to another line. To get 8, we need to get the second element in our array A. So that is going to be 1 for index here. And then this is the third element, which is the index 2. So now we get 4, then 8. And we'll do this one more time, console.log A, and 11 is down here in our third element, which is index 2. And it's the very first one, which is going to be index 0. So now we get 4, 8, and 11 being printed out. Now there's a ton of stuff that you can do with arrays, but the very last thing I want to talk about is going to be how you get the length of an array. So we'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is an array of length 5. And to get that, we just say console.log a.length. If we type out length here, this is going to give us the length of the array. Click save. You can see we get 5 being printed out because there's 5 elements in this array. If we add another element, another element, another element, another element, like this, for example, now we save, we get 10 because there's 10 elements in this array. And something interesting you'll note is if you just come in here and click the period after A, you'll notice a bunch of stuff shows up. These are all the different things you can do on an array. We're going to talk about a lot of these in this course, but it's not really important to understand most of these right now. As long as you know how to add elements with push, as long as you know how to check the length of an array with length, that's really all you need to worry about right now. Now in the next video, we're going to talk about objects, which are like the bread and butter type in JavaScript. It's by far the most used type in JavaScript, and it's super important to understand this, so I can't wait to see you in this next video.